Hello, everybody. Welcome to the first episode of the Pinnacle podcast. And today I am joined by I didn't even say my name. I'm Daniel, and I'm joined by my two co-hosts.
I'm Berman.
I'm Chris.
Yes, Chris, our good editor, and Berman, our other good co-host as well. And today, all three of us are going to be discussing the first phase of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We'll be doing videos discussing the second and third and fourth phases as well in the future. But for right now, we want to get started in the first video of this 4-part series. Now, we are all big fans of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Marvel is admittedly my childhood. I haven't read every single comics for the characters, but I grew up with certain characters like Spider-Man, Iron Man, Captain America, Deadpool. You guys get the point. So, without further ado, we're going to begin and dive right into the first movie, which is going to be the first Iron Man, which was in 2008, starring Robert Downey Jr. Now, I will say this. This is my personal favorite movie from the first phase of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It was pretty good, you know. It had an incredible introduction of Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man, and most of the action really holds up. And, you know, they don't really overuse CGI that much in this movie, in my opinion. I like that the suit-up scene was inspired by 2007's Transformers, not like the comics in, you know, the Phase 3 films, which we'll get into in the future. The movie also had a great ending and start to set up the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe before and after the credits. The only major complaint, I guess you could say, is that the villain was pretty forgettable, and I didn't really feel the need for a massive giant robot battle. In the end, I just felt like it was a little cheesy, and I thought everything beforehand was pretty great. And you know what? This is a very good film, and even though it's not the best out of the bunch, I will admit it is very enjoyable for what the hell it is worth. And yeah, in the beginning, you see Tony Stark is nothing more than a billionaire asshole, and I really like the fact that Tony Stark isn't a superhero right off the bat. Most people aren't going to be immediately superheroes once they get all these powers and responsibilities, especially someone in Tony Stark's shoes. So, yeah, I really liked what this movie had to offer, and overall, I'm going to give this a 7.5 out of 10.
Chris, you can go first.
All right. This has got to be one of the strongest ways to start the MCU universe. Well, we'll get to the next movie. But anywho, Iron Man 1 was pretty decent. I like to give a big shout out to the beginning because that shit was insane. Of Tony almost fucking dying in the Afghanistan desert, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Like that scene alone was so like out of nowhere, and I'm just like, is this a Marvel film or is this dude really about to fucking die? And there's many great things, like for instance the intro, the best action, his little sequence in his little cave where he builds the Iron Man suit, and the villain for the most part was kind of eh, but I think what really sold it was Tony Stark, and it was during his bad time in his life, so Iron Man's pretty decent. So 8 out of 10.
Good one. I like that. So I'll probably say the same thing with 8. This is a great movie and a great start for the MCU, and I really love how they did this. All the build up for like the silver suit first, the fails, then they turn into this nice red, orange colored look for the suit is a great start. The tank scene, which is probably a great scene, everyone loves using that. The villain is something now I love. Actually, the villain's cool. Technically, it is a original Iron Man character as a villain. That's Ironmonger. Now, not a lot of people know that much about that, but It's actually a villain that was in the comic books for okay timeline. So I actually loved the scene with the Ironmonger versus Iron Man. So I actually really liked the movie and a pretty great start. So definitely an 8 for me.
All right, so I think we can all say that we all verily enjoyed Iron Man 1. Now, this next movie, all three of us are going to have very different opinions. So please hear all three of us out, heading on into the second movie in the Phase 1. All right, second movie, The Incredible Hulk. Now, I just have to say it. I did not like this movie. And I'm going to try to be as nice as possible without, destroying this movie because I get it. This was, you know, made 14 years ago, but that doesn't really excuse it too much, does it? In 2008, technology was still pretty good. And I mentioned that they didn't really rely on CGI at all in Iron Man. However, I feel like this movie really does take the opposite route. And not only does this movie take the opposite route when it comes to CGI, I think the CGI looks disgusting. And I think it has the worst effects in a Marvel Cinematic Universe film. Honestly, the Hulk looks disgusting. Abomination, who was Tim Riff throughout the film, was a literal abomination. Now, Edward Norton was fine, kind of boring, but fine. Everyone else honestly had genuinely bad acting performances, especially his love interest. She was just freaking horrible. And honestly, a lot of this movie is just shots. Like literally, a lot of this movie is just shots. It's arguably one of the most forgettable MCU films of all time. I don't know how I sat there from start to finish. I am serious. And like the dialogue in this movie, it's just so bad. And a lot of the things in this film has genuinely not aged well. The after credit scene is cool. And again, Edward Norton is fine. And I'm trying to be nice. But Jesus, honestly, this movie is not good. Not good at all. Is it horrible? Is it the worst thing I've ever seen? No. It's just a bad superhero movie. And that's just me being 100% honest with myself. It honestly gets worse with age. So, like I said, I'm not really trying to be offensive here, but I got to give it a 3 out of 10. I was tempted on giving it a 2, but I'll be nice because I think there are movies worse than this that we'll dive into later on throughout this series. So I'm going to give it a 3.
You go ahead, Berman.
All right, so this is actually one of my favorite movies, and now everyone's gonna hate me for this because I people don't like this movie, but I just freaking love this movie. And another personal opinion is that I actually this is probably the best Hulk that they ever had, and I don't really the Hulk in the Avengers not that bad, but not as good as Edward Norton. I just love how he actually work he kind of acts more like a Banner type of character, and I just like him more. Now, the Abomination, which is Tim Roth, or in the movie he's called Kowalski. I actually loved this character, and it just made me cringe every time when they see the battlefield happen, and Hulk booted him like a bro kick to the face and pretty much broke every bone in his body. I freaking made me cringe, but I effing loved it. I just started loving this movie so badly because of how brutal it was. The transformation from Edward Norton to the Hulk, great, a great transformation. You see how it looks, and a great Hulk. I know you don't like it, Danny, but I love this type of Hulk. It looks nicer, it looks cooler to me. So I am always this type of person for me. Yeah, Stan Lee does die in this cameo, but yeah, I know it sucks, but I actually just I like the movie in general. I kind of forget about that. Um,
Not cool, man.
There's a lot of good things. The dialogue, yeah, it's a little bit off, but it sounds kind of like a scientist trying to find out a way to cure himself. This whole thing was trying to cure himself with this. Kind of did, but only worked for an hour. I always love it, and I watch it like 10 times. If like, maybe a month, I try watching it, and I could just repeatedly watch it just because of how good the fight scene was with Abomination being looking exactly what it should be at Abomination. Bones broken. It just to me just one of the best movies that I love watching. So I give this a 9 out of 10 myself.
All right, Chris, your take.
Oh man, I gotta close the door for this shit. All right, Berman. I'm not
He's
gonna.
what, go off.
I gotta pop off. I'm sorry, but this is like literally not even the worst superhero film. This is literally the worst film I've ever had to sit through. And I didn't even sit through all of it, if I'm being honest. Half the time, it was just him communicating with his girlfriend on a computer through some cringy ass chat box, and then montages after
Ooh.
montages of nothingness and shot stills. It was way too long. Hell, I finished this movie in 40 minutes because I was fast forwarding all these montages. It's so bad. And the
It
CGI,
wasn't his girlfriend,
his girlfriend, who the hell, Dr. Mitchell, or whatever the hell,
Doctor Blue.
Dr. Blue, whatever it was, dude, it was bad. That CGI
Ooh.
I was not feeling it, dude. That's like some fucking 2002 shit right there. And they killed
You got
Stanley, but 0 out of 10.
0 out of 10. Nothing positive to say at all.
No, I don't want to watch this movie ever again.
Oh wow, wow. All right, Berman, you got a rebuttal real quick before we move on.
Well, I think you just maybe because you just don't like how it ages. I just love it mainly because how brutal it is. Mainly because I just love how good the Edward Norton is as a Hulk.
Like,
Probably
I,
one of
I
the
think
best
you two
Hulks
should
they ever
debate for
had.
a little bit because you two basically have complete opposite opinions.
Pretty much because I love this movie and I just love how Edward Norton is probably the best Hulk that we're ever gonna have, in my opinion. And there's no other. Yes, the effects maybe might be probably bad, but technically it looks great. All the freaking great bloody, like the blood you don't see very often in any movies of Marvel recently. I just love how good Hulk is, and probably you just don't like how it's slow paced, but this is kind of the introduction to a Hulk and how he's running away from the government, trying to experiment on him. So technically, this is kind of the whole movie is about. And if you have that opinion, it's fair. But my opinion is always going to stay the same. It's going to be a 9, just because of how good, and I just love how good the Hulk is, how good Edward Norton is, and how good and brutal the movie was.
Any points you'd like to bring up, Chris?
Have you ever seen Return of the Mummy 3?
Yes,
Terminator
yes, I
3.
have. Yes, I have.
So the CGI with
Oh
the Rock.
no, you're comparing it to Return of the Mummy.
I'm sorry. I can respect it, Mermaid. I can see it your way, but I'm sorry. This movie was so generic. Like, if you sit down and watch like a really bad Michael Bay film, this movie nails it 100% from teeth to tone. I just didn't like it. I can't stand this movie. I'm sorry, man. I don't ever want to see this movie again. And they should reboot the
Mm,
Incredible Hulk because
mm.
movie bad.
All right. Well, two completely different opinions right there. Personally, I won't say I hated it as much as Chris, but I didn't love it as much as Berman. I thought this was a bad film, but not a horrible one. So yeah, that's all I really gotta say. A 3, a 9, and a 0. Again, two. That's three different opinions right there. Now, this is going to be more of a 2-on-1 rather than a free for all. So let's get into the third movie, Iron Man 2. Now, I'm just going to say it. This is my least favorite movie in Phase 1. I think this is the most boring out of all 6 movies outside of maybe a few scenes. In this movie, I'm just going to say some of the positives before I tear this shithole apart. Tony kind of forgives / understands his father a little more, but they didn't really go too in depth with that, in my opinion, to make it very interesting. They got some dope introductions from Black Widow. Iron Patriot is a cool sidekick, and of course, you can never go wrong with Robert Downey Jr. in this movie, but he's given the least material to work with in this movie, in my opinion. So I think Whiplash is a very terrible villain, and his little boss or assistant just cringe, absolutely awful. Um, and honestly, I was struggling to even stay awake during this fucking shitty movie. I just really thought it was bad. Like, honestly, I struggled for the Incredible Hulk, but I struggled even more for this film. That honestly, it's just really not good. They're really, like I said, outside of maybe a few of the characters, they're not real. None of these characters are really given much material to work with at all. And the premise of the movie is just really fucking stupid. So the world basically gets mad at Tony, and then basically, when Tony doesn't really fix the problem entirely, they basically forgive him. It's like, okay, it's all good now. Like, honestly, the premise of this movie is very retarded, and I can't even go in depth into this because I feel like if I do, I'll just literally lose my fucking brain cells as I talk about this shitty film. So again, I have not really many nice things to say about it. It is, in my opinion, the second worst MCU project to date. And you'll find out but first in the next video. But for right now, I just hate this film. These two are going to disagree with me a lot, but this has every single bad MCU trope you could possibly think of. It's just not here. And again, none of these films are 1 out of 10s. None of these films are the worst films I've ever seen. But God, this film is just an absolute mess. What a fucking mess. I'm just gonna say it. This is a 2.5 out of 10. I hate Iron Man 2.
Who wants to start ripping him a new hole?
Go for it, Bourbon.
I'm not
Attack this man.
rip me a new hole. Nah.
Yeah, it's gonna be me, man. So then me and Chris, man, this is gonna be 2-on-1. This is gonna be just a gang up. So first, Iron Man, what the hell are you talking about? This is a great movie. Like the
Great
first,
movie.
the
Great
Whiplash.
movie. What drugs are you taking,
Stop
son?
interrupting him.
Yeah, stop. We never interrupted you. So this is a great movie. The Whiplash is actually one of these villains that is actually probably third of the Iron Man villains. First is the Mandarin. Second is I think was Ironmonger, and two was Whiplash. Whiplash is one of the main villains that he goes up against most of the time. It's a great. The actor is great who does it. Great voice, he does it, and just his whips and everything. And the great fight scene at NASCAR in the NASCAR race. I think it was NASCAR or some type of race. It was a great scene of him coming out, getting his like jumpsuit off, burning all the whips, and just start whipping everything, just starting cutting cars in half. It's just great. The armor up scene, bringing a suitcase, just arming it up, great. And I don't know how you think about it. Now Iron Patriot, great, I love it. And the fight scene with the Iron Patriot versus Iron Man at his what's it called his mansion, great fight scene that happens, and it just works. And then after that, when he goes in this big Iron Man convention, the the mini Iron Man models start attacking the main Iron Man and War Machine. Great. It's just one of the best. It's just so interesting and just yes, maybe the boring. I mean, it's not a boring plot that much. It's pretty much just saying, hey, we want to get. Sorry, he has too much power. Iron Man has too much power. We want to have insurance against him. Yes, it's true, but it's a great freaking movie, and I think it's a good movie to watch people show people. And Black Widow did a great job in doing this too. It's everything you want from a good Iron Man 2, a good Iron Man sequel. I don't know how you think this is a really bad movie. It's just a good movie, and it's just always an interesting watch, and you can never get sick of it. So I'm gonna give Chris and let him review another. Oh,
Hold up. Sorry. But Chris, before you speak,
Yeah.
I just have I just have a few rebuttals to say to Berman real fast. And don't worry, I'll be respectful. Rip me a new one. That's a bit inappropriate, good sir. But I will say this. All right, I'm aware Whiplash is a villain from the comics. However, I just felt like there wasn't really anything interesting to him. And yes, maybe you have a point with some of the fight scenes looking kind of decent, but you could quite literally say that about every single Marvel film. And the other thing that I have to say is why are Iron Man and Iron Patriot even fighting in the first place? And it just doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. And they're really being put against each other for practically no reason when you think about it all in the long scheme of things. And the thing is, when the whole movie was acting like Iron Man had too much power, the reason why I didn't like that is because unlike in Civil War when Scarlet Witch accidentally blew up a building, the difference was in that movie was there was actual physical evidence behind the government's point. But in this movie, the government just looked very nonsensical because they don't even have any physical evidence to use against Iron Man. So I don't really understand how that is a good plot, if I'm being completely honest. So I'll let you respond, and
well,
yeah, I'll let Chris take over.
So first, a good response before Chris starts. It's the what he's trying to do. There's some evidence about this, but mainly what Justin Hammer, the one of the say the backup for Whiplash, Hammer is kind of actually kind of more a competitor to Tony, and he just wants to steal his work. So technically, Justin Hammer starts working with the military, saying, "Hey, if you want to have this suit, you go get that suit, and I can make improvements and make this suit better and make this suit for all the military." That's more the premise, but it's a good premise, I would say. Now, Chris, you can take it away.
Daniel, what are you talking about? What do you mean the Iron Patriot is fighting Iron Man for no reason? Iron Man's being a dick. He just needs to surrender to the U.S. government. And there is a plot.
For what
Iron Man,
reason?
because he's too powerful. One man can't have all that. Because you would have known that if you watched the movie.
So Iron Man, Superman now.
Yes. But we can take away those machines from him, not like Superman. And Tony's dying too in this movie. What are you talking about? He's fucking dying throughout the film.
What point are you trying to make here with that?
I'm saying like there's more to it than just like the boring. Oh, the government's just trying to take my weapons away because I'm too powerful. No, Tony's dying, and I'll give you credit where it's due. The first half of this movie is pretty boring. It doesn't really start to pick up until like halfway through. But this movie's not a 2. This movie's a 5 out of 10. It
So
went.
you think it's at least a mid though. You
I
can't tell me it's a good movie.
I will give it. It is a mid movie. And you're not gonna diss my boy Whiplash's death crying because that was fucking hilarious.
Whiplash was whip ass. It was ass.
He was great. He was
It was,
fine. He's not the worst MCU villain, dude. He was fine,
Whiplash was limp ass. There we go.
dude. But you gotta see where he's coming from, dude. His dad is just like, you know, my dying wish because Tony Stark hates Russia. So I need you to become the Russian Iron Man to avenge my death.
Again, I think the concept on paper is fine. I just don't feel like they ran with those concepts deeply enough, especially like the one with Howard Stark, for example, and Tony dying. They could have definitely gotten more out of that too, but I don't feel like they did. I'm being very honest.
But they also introduced Black Widow, and dude, Elon Musk was in it, dude. Come on, Elon Musk was in it.
Donald Trump was in Home Alone 2 doesn't make No, I'm not gonna go there. I'm not gonna go there.
Nah,
So
Please don't.
but for real though, Verby, you're with me on this. This is not the worst MC movie. I think it's pretty decent. There was
what's your
many
rating?
5 out of 10.
No. So your rating's a 5, Chris. What's your rating, Brendan?
6.
Okay, for me it's a 2.5. So again, see, they don't agree with me on that one. It's okay, but I think this next movie will all have a somewhat similar opinion. This fourth MCU movie, Thor. Now, I will admit, Thor and Loki have pretty good introductions in this film, especially Loki. And honestly, it's a simple film, brother versus brother plot. Nothing to really write home about, nothing crazy. But again, it's a good introduction to the Thor character and what he has to offer in the MCU. My main issues really are that I don't really care for the side characters, and honestly, Odin is an asshole when you really think about it all. And kind of trying to, be mad at Loki for going after Odin feels kind of unreasonable. I mean, him wanting to kill Odin may not be the answer, but the fact that Odin, nobody really calls Odin out for any of the wrong he does in this film, it just kind of gets to me in that little odd way. So that's all I will say. I feel like, again, the side characters' acting was just not very good, nothing to really write home about. And there was a few cool scenes, but nothing special. Thor's friends, they were whatever. They're not very memorable whatsoever either. So I think it's fine. Like, it's nothing incredible, but it's a decent film. And I can't hate it too much because, again, it's just fine. I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. Decent film. I wouldn't go out of my way to watch it again, but I wouldn't be in a desperate hurry to change the channel either. It is what it is. So you guys can take over.
All right. I would say probably the same thing. I actually liked something, and it makes sense why Odin is an a-hole or an asshole. He pretty much what he thinks is that his son is kind of a spoiled prick, if you want to call it, or a spoiled kid. He just thinks he gets everything handed to himself. So that's why he's pretty much Odin's being an a-hole, trying to say, "Hey, you're not spoiled. You need to learn some humility." So that makes sense to me why he's there. Side characters makes sense. I don't like some side characters were funny. I like some of these. It was kind of fun to see them, and it was just interesting. Heimdall, it was actually kind of I think one of my more favorites just of the side characters. They're just fun to see. Loki, great introduction to him, the trickster. I love how when he first got the cube, the big tesseract. I loved how he used it. I just loved. It was actually pretty good. I'm probably not gonna rewatch it, but I did like how the fight scenes it went for. It's simple, but I like it. So I probably give it a 6.5 for me.
And then I probably give it. You know what? I hate to give fives, but it's gonna get a five. It's okay. I mean, the only greatest things we got out of it was Thor and Loki. And Odin is kind of a dick, but I kind of seen it from the point of Loki being entitled to everything. But he's just like, it's fine for what it is. It's an average superhero movie, so without going too much in that, I wouldn't personally rewatch it myself, but uh, it's okay for what it is. I'm not gonna say more.
All right. So, sorry about that, y'all. I am back
It's cool.
now. You guys gave your thoughts on Thor.
Yeah.
All right. So now we can move on to the fifth movie, Captain America: The First Avenger. So when we look at this takes place during World War II, and I think the setting is pretty much nailed here. And it basically is the first movie, not only for Captain America, but when it comes to the timeline, as of right now, it is the first movie in all of the MCU. I think this has great and strong characters to root for, like Steve, Peggy, and Bucky. And seeing young Howard is awesome as well, knowing the connection Steve has with not just Howard, but the entire Stark family. And you'll know what I'm talking about later on. Now, I also have to say a few of the issues, though, despite some of the things I liked. I feel like Bucky's death is played off way too easily, especially for a character that, becomes bigger on later on. Red Skull was fine, but I just have to say his assistant was just insanely cheesy. Sola, just really freaking cheesy. And some of the action did not age very well, and neither did some of the effects. But I will say this movie has heart to it, a lot of heart. And at the end of the day, I feel like there was a lot of missed potential, I guess you could say. But despite that missed potential, you got a good film here, okay? You got a a decent film with an iconic ending. The ending is one of the best endings in the MCU. Not the best, but one of. It's just, again, the movie has heart. But I feel like if they really took the time to, establish some of the action a little bit, establish some of the villains and the motivations a bit more than they did, this film could have been great. It's still good, though. I cannot complain too much about it. So I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10, better than the majority of the movies in Phase 1. I'll let these two take away.
Yeah, I love this movie. It's to me, it's kind of like it's a war movie. I just love seeing good war movies are interesting for me. And going back to the World War II with Nazis and everything, it's really interesting. I do love the characters, Steve, and I love the progression of these three being the friends. You see them. I love seeing Howard, and it's always interesting to see them. I love Red Skull. Red Skull is great. He to me should always creep me out just because his freaking head just is like how the hell do you always get that? Yeah, Zol is very cheesy, but I can get past that mainly just by Red Skull. Action, not that bad. It's a war movie. I would call it too. It's not that bad the actions. It's skittish for me. I think they did definitely nail this time era fairly well, and I think I probably maybe I watch it depending on if I really feel like I want to watch and recap on stuff, but I'd probably definitely give it a 7 for me too.
Damn, I think I'm gonna have to give this movie an extra point this movie to me is the greatest peak of MCU history. Everything about this is perfect. The villains are great. They made
So
me.
if it was perfect, it would be a 10.
It's not a 10, but like, okay, if I'm gonna give it a rating, it's gonna get an 8.5 because I enjoy this movie. It it really set off the branches for what the MCU, what made it so good in the beginning. I mean, now it's kind of like more iffy depending on the projects. But I enjoyed the villains. Red Skull's great, and you're not gonna diss my boy Zola. He's the perfect. Don't take this out of context. The perfect Nazi fucking character stereotype for this type of movie because it's a World
You
War II
support
film.
Nazis.
No, I don't. I said don't take it out of context.
I have a grandma who
No,
is German, and a
no,
grandpa who is
no,
Jewish. I
no,
think they would both be very offended
no, no,
watching this
no.
podcast, Chris.
Shut up. Don't. You're
He's
not canceling. But I don't know what you're talking about. The action. The action was really decent, and then there's many great highlights of them fighting the Red Skull, and the CGI maybe a little less polished, but I still respect it for what it is. And plus, Peggy and Steve, their dynamics are perfect for each other, the perfect couple. And god damn it, the way it ends makes any man tear. And then yeah, but Bucky too. Him dying in quotation was a little like what like why? But besides that, I'm gonna give this project an 8.5 because it's personally one of my favorite films in this MCU universe. It's classic.
I can respect that opinion. The only thing I will say though is I don't really say why to Bucky's death. I was perfectly fine with it. I just feel like it was played off too easily, and not much emotion was carried off from that death. If that makes sense.
I can see it.
So now we're moving on to the sixth and last movie we're talking about today, The Avengers. Now, I will say this. I think this is just a good popcorn film. Uh, I just have to say there are some genuinely funny and iconic scenes. This is also peak Hulk, in my opinion, when Mark Ruffalo did his first appearance. I disagree with what Berman said in the beginning about Edward Norton. I think this Hulk is better. Sure, it doesn't really, entirely fit the Bruce Banner outlook, I guess you could say. But to me, it really fits and blends better with what the MCU is today. And sometimes you don't really have to be comic book accurate to have a better version of certain things. And that's just my personal take. I think this is peak Hulk. I think Hulk just throwing around Loki like a rag doll and having some other moments. He was definitely the best thing about this film, in my personal opinion, along with Iron Man. And this movie was really the first major showcase of evolution for Iron Man, in my opinion, when he sacrificed himself to save New York and the planet. He nearly died, and we'll save that for later. Simply put, though, the action has aged very well. Loki makes for a overall fun villain, nothing too complicated and crazy to think about for the viewer watching. And this also begins the after credit phenomenon when Thanos pops up for the very first time. Now, the only major issue I have is really that some of the dialogue and jokes have not aged well for me. And maybe this movie could have been cut down by 15, 20 minutes based off some of the jokes. And this movie would have been even way easier to digest, honestly. It would be a 7.5 or an 8 if that was the case. But because of that, I'll say it was good, but just good. So I'm going to give this film a 7 out of 10 and let these two talk about it more.
Yeah, so I do love this. It's a good movie to watch. I have the movie myself, so whenever I want to, I can watch it. Don't get me wrong, I do like this Hulk. It was funny to see. He's comedic relief sometimes to me, just because of like the punch out of nowhere to Thor, or the Thor fight scene, or just the ragdoll of Loki, and always just makes me laugh every time when I watch that scene. As soon as he gets done smashing him, Loki gets it's like super heavy breathing. I just love that. It just makes me laugh so badly. But it sucks that my boy Edward is not there. It's my personal opinion, but I love this movie. It's a good movie. Loki was a great villain. To me, he's just sadistic to me. Just with his freaking eyeball that he freaking did in that movie. He freaking just drilled a man's eyeball out of his socket. Like that was just brutal. But I do loved it. It was good showing of Loki. Action, great to see. Love Hawkeye's action. I just love to see him like shooting these great different types of arrows. Iron Man, just saving the world pretty much. The war coming out of no, sorry, Thor. Yeah, Thor coming out of nowhere, just using thunder from the freaking tower. The Thanos at the end. Interesting to see him there. It was cool to see that he popped up, join the later side of the event of the MCU days, and definitely I will probably watch it anytime I feel like it. I give this a probably 7.5 for me.
And yeah, uh, definitely, it's not my favorite movie, but for what it is, I liked it. Like you said, Berman, you captured it well. It's just a perfect popcorn muncher kind of thing. Loki's great. He's the best villain. There's many great action scenes, especially all the Avenger guys fighting in Central Park or New York City or whatever on the streets, and Hawkeye actually doing something for himself. And the best thing that I personally enjoyed about the film was, definitely Iron Man because he's the GOAT and he pretty much almost died, but the way he went out was incredibly badass to him just taking on that giant ass worm thing to like prevent like more holes in the future. And I like the Hulk. I think this actor is a lot better. I'm not familiar with his name, but he's the current guy. I liked him a lot. Uh, and I guess the worst thing about this movie was the after credit scenes. If anybody was familiar, is when all the Avenger guys were just like fucking eating that bagel, and then we had to sit through like 10 minutes of nothing but credits just to hear that stupid joke. And I'm like, you wasted my time, you motherfuckers.
Oh yeah, the new Hulk, by the way, would be Mark Ruffalo, if you are curious.
Yep, that's my man. And I'm sorry, Ruben. I think he's a better Hulk than your boy. I like this man better. And Hulk being
Not
Hulk.
taking.
But yeah, I liked it, so I'll give it probably like a 6.5.
All right. So wow. So my rating stands: Iron Man 7.5, Incredible Hulk 3, Iron Man 2 2.5, Thor 6, Captain America 7, and Avengers also a 7. My overall phase score is a 6 out of 10. Decent phase, however, does not hold up to today's current standards.
Completely fair. I picked a lot of them a little bit higher, mainly my number 9, 9 out of 10, my Hulk. But definitely, these they don't definitely stand against all these newer age MCU. But these are good intro. If anyone doesn't know that much about these MCU guys, you can watch these and know what's happening, and you can start watching if you need to. I probably this base score I would call it probably 6.5 for me.
And I think I'm gonna probably give it. I'll give it a 5. If it wasn't for the Incredible Hulk, it probably would have gotten a 6. But overall, the first phase was pretty good for what it was. There were some stinkers in there, but overall, I enjoyed my time. But the next phase, oh boy,
Well,
the next
the,
phase.
the next phase will feature Iron Man 3, Thor the Dark World, Captain America the Winter Soldier, Guardians of the Galaxy, The Avengers Age of Ultron, and Ant-Man. So, thank you all so much for watching the very first episode of the Pinnacle podcast. I've been Daniel,
I've been Berman.
Chris.
and we'll see you all in the next one. Take it easy.